Where are we heading, Mike?
Escrow.
All right, so Mike and I are headed over to escrow right now to get some contracts signed. We wanted to kind of take this opportunity. This has been a crazy week for us. We had a lot of stuff going on, but those of you that are growing a business, right, where you're getting beyond just yourself in the office and trying to hire employees, kind of wanted to point out that it's not all fun and games. You know, we sometimes you feel like you're running a daycare center. You know, we have a killer team. We've got rock stars in the office. Even with a team like ours that does so well, you still end up with problems. And this week is no different. Definitely have some employee issues this week that we're working through. You know, when you think you solve one, a few weeks later you find another one that pops up. And growing a team is not easy, and especially trying to develop a rock star team that will go out and do everything you need them to do, get contracts, do their job, show up on time, make the phone calls they need to make. It's definitely challenging, and Mike and I have dealt with a lot of this stuff over the last 4 to 6 months, really. And like I said, sometimes you just feel like you got a daycare center going on. So if you're out there and you're trying to grow this, you're trying to hire a team, it's not an easy thing to do. We went through a lot of people until we found the team that we have now, and even this team still has issues. And Mike, what's your take on, you know, employees, and what advice can you give somebody on issues dealing with team members?
You know, ultimately we're trying to create a culture here, a culture and a lifestyle, and that lifestyle and that culture is to be successful and make money, and that starts from the owner of the company all the way down to the newest employee. And to be able to maintain that, you got to keep everybody on their toes. And unfortunately, sometimes people fall off or their priorities get out of order, and it's our job to reel them back in and keep them in line, because what happens is if you let that get too far out of hand, all of a sudden your culture is no longer your culture, and you're fighting against your own team. I won't allow that to happen. I like breaking all of our company records every month, every quarter, every year, and I want to keep that going. I want to keep expanding. And ultimately, our culture is going to outperform an individual. Everybody's human, everybody makes mistakes, but ultimately, your vision and your priorities have to align with ours, or we're going to move on. Tough decisions have to be made sometimes, and we don't like to do that. And I'm always for putting an investment into the employee and making them feel part of the team, and part of the growth and part of the success is based off their performance. And I don't like to switch out employees very often. I'd rather put work into that person and make them successful and make them part of our lifestyle and our culture, rather than just turn them over and start with somebody new and start from ground one again. It's not always that easy, and it's tiring. It's very, very tiring.
Well, you made a point fighting against your team members, right? And so if we look back to day one of this business, as I started hiring, somebody might fit into your culture on day one, right? Then you fast forward 5 years. That same person may not fit with your culture at that point. They may not be the person that's going to grow with your team. And they may have been great and so fantastic on day one, where they took a big part in helping you grow your business. But then as you truly grow and you get more and more employees in the office, and you go from a team of 2 to 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, as you start doing that, you might find that your company is changing. And as your company changes, those people may not exactly fit in with that new culture. And I think that's what we found. You know, we've got some employees that have been with us for a long time. Those people just may not fit in with the growth the business is doing in the direction we need to go. Some of it could be because they don't want to change with the culture. Some of it could be that, you know, they're a little smaller minded and they like it better as a smaller business. Unfortunately, as we grow, you know, my attention and Mike's attention has to spread between potentially 10 people versus giving that one person all that attention. So as you look at people that are on board with you, don't be surprised if, as your vision of the company becomes more solid and your growth plan becomes more solid, if you have to change out people at that point. And I don't want to get into the small issues we deal with and even the big issues with employees because, it's their personal issues, their personal battles. But I will say that some of the things that even have happened within our company surprises us. We look at it and we're like, oh my gosh, like, why would you do this? Why wouldn't you think this through? With any size company, you're going to deal with these issues. So don't get completely caught off guard if an employee issue comes about, because, well, not really if, when. You will have an employee issue at one point. Could be a small thing, could be a big thing. I've had someone steal from me in the past. That person's no longer with me. I've had someone start a competing business and work that competing business from my office. You definitely think people are a certain way and they turn out to be another way. So when you sit with someone in an interview, it's your opportunity to really drill down and get to know that person, get to know everything about them during that interview, because we really have no way to fact check it, right? Someone can sit in there and say they have a bachelor's degree and they don't. You don't really have a way to fact check it. You are looking at that person and you are taking their word and their handshake for what they're telling you. But you might find out down the road that they exaggerated on their resume. And some of that stuff you just have to deal with. And I think we've both seen that, right? Where someone says they have experience in something, but then that's the exact same thing they ask questions on how to do later down the road. And that gets very frustrating. Of course, for you on the sales team, people say, oh, well, I had X amount of dollars that I brought in for a sales organization. Then they come onto your team. What do you do when you're like, there's no way that could be true? What are your thoughts on that?
Luckily, we see through it pretty quickly, which is good, but ultimately life and business are very similar, and in life you're going to outgrow people and people are going to let you down. And just like with that, you got to move on, and if you outgrow somebody, it's hard to swallow, but it's better off for you and in your life. And the company's the same thing. So with business, some employees are going to grow with you and others are going to not grow with you, and it's hard to move on, but ultimately we want to keep that culture and keep that high level of success up, and look at a sports organization. The best of the best have a culture, and they instill that in every single person through the entire organization. And a business should be the same exact way. And if somebody falls off, unfortunately, you got to move on. And in no way am I saying give up on anybody. Give everybody the most opportunities that you possibly can to succeed. And if at that point they're the ones holding themselves back, you got to move on, because we're still going to go out, we're still going to be successful, and the company's still going to grow. So it's whether or not you can maintain that success and that grind and that hustle every single day. And we all have our off days, but if you have the same goals and intentions, you should be able to survive that and ultimately grow. And right now for us, we're dealing with some stuff, but I think that we have a great team, phenomenal team. And overall, our averages are up, even through the world crisis right now. Our averages per deal are up, and that's phenomenal. But there's always that improvement we can do, and we strive for greatness. So I think that's why ultimately we take it very personal when somebody doesn't perform on a great level.
So as you guys are hiring, remember that slow to fire or slow to hire, quick to fire mentality, right? Take your time hiring. Don't hire that first person that comes in. Bring them in for a second interview if you need to. Spend time talking to them on the phone. Challenge them during these interviews. Don't just say, okay, great. I like the way you walked in here. I'm going to hire you. Spend more time talking to these people. We put people through the ringer through interviews. And it's a little bit of fun, but it's also the point where we need to see how the person reacts under pressure. Because when you start looking at the job that we're hiring for, these people have to have the ability to go walk into a seller's home, talk to the seller. The seller has home field advantage at that point, and you're the away team there. And you have to walk in and get this person to sell you that house at a discount. And that can get very awkward. You can get kicked out of the house when you give an offer. We need somebody that's going to come into our team and know that they're going to try one last shot to try to get that deal while the seller's walking them to the door. And we try to push that through in the interview, and we try to really get the pressure on that person to see how they react. If they shut down in that interview, most likely they're not going to be the person that's going to come on board with us to move forward. So when I talk about quick to fire, there's a certain point, like Mike said, we don't like letting people go. We want to know that we've given everybody the opportunity to grow within the company, and that we've given them the training that they need to grow within the company. And if we're sure we've done that, and we've given that person every training opportunity and every chance, and they still just will not get it, then at that point, it's time for that person to leave the company so you can replace them with somebody else. Don't feel like you're in debt to an employee where you have to keep them on board because you know their family or you know their history and they're struggling with something. I mean, if they're not going to work for the company, they're not going to work for the company. And at that point, you need to set friendship aside. You need to bring the business mentality up and say, hey, this person is not adding any value to my business. And you can think to yourself, if this person was not here tomorrow, what would my business look like? Would you see an impact from that person not being here? Can you fix that impact? Then at that point, it's time to decide, is it time for that person to go or not? If they're not doing what they need to do, you got to get rid of them and you got to move on to the next person. So I promise you, you will have issues with employees. It's just at what time will that happen? Whether it be a year in, 5 years in, 10 years in. I mean, if you can survive 2 years without one employee issue, I mean, God bless you. That's absolutely amazing. I highly doubt that will happen, but I wish you guys the best, and I hope that you guys really take this to heart and really see that growing a business is not easy. Don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged when an employee creates problems. Don't get discouraged when you can't find the right employee. When you interview and interview and interview, keep going. They will eventually come. Change your job description. Change what you have out there. Change the platforms you have the job listed on. Really try to find those right candidates. When you find that platform that works, Wise Hire works great for us, then you take that, you interview those people, and you get that person on board and you grow your business. So I hope this helped you guys. You guys are not alone with employee issues. We're here as well, but the difference is we're working through them. I hope you are as well.